Welcome to the Armchair GM podcast. I'm Chris. That's Dylan. We also brought in an expert. His name is Ken Wilson. Perhaps you've heard of him. I think today we're probably going to have a little chinwag about who we're building around for the current Calgary Flames roster. Let's have some fun
Yeah,
and get into
it's
it. Welcome to the Armchair GM podcast. I suppose I probably should have told you I was going to do that.
I stepped on your intro a bit. I was going to say, calling me an expert might be stretching the truth a little bit, but I do like to talk and write about hockey over the years. So
Yeah. Well, thanks for coming on, man.
yeah,
It's been great chatting with you the past few weeks on the Discord and all that stuff. Actually, the Discord's probably been my favorite place to talk hockey over the past few years because I stay off X and I have, Facebook is getting worse and Blue
yeah,
Sky's dead, and it's just So the Discord's been good. Most of the people seem fairly knowledgeable too. So
yeah. There's some interesting characters and back and forth, but usually the discussion's pretty interesting and genial.
yeah. Well, yeah. So the other day, you and I were actually having a little conversation about which cohort of players the Flames should be really concentrating on. Kind of what age group the Flames should be concentrating on building up towards the future competitive window that we would like to see, and
Right.
kind of how we plan about getting there. And I wrote a little bit down. I kind of did like an 18 to 21 and then a 22 to 24 and then a 25 plus.
Yeah,
Um so I don't know, let's just get into it.
sure. Yeah, the
Because
issue with
yeah,
I
go
was going
ahead.
to say, so when you see discussion usually on most teams, the Flames included, you see a lot of discussion about depth charts, right? So people see, Kadri is the 1C, and then Backlund's the 3C, and then Coronado's the one, the right wing, and they start to think about building, a pretty standard depth chart around that. So they start plugging holes, and where the Flames are in their competitive window and their build is like that's not really terribly relevant, if you ask me, because they're not ready to contend. Filling holes on the roster is something you have to do to ice a team, but in terms of building a competitive team, it's not really there. So it's better to think in sort of a cohort model, which you brought up, which means they have sort of the post apex veteran portion of the team. I'd say over 29, 30. All those guys are expensive. They're aging. They're not going to get better in aggregate, and there's still a lot of them on the team. Like they took up most of the cap space last year. They played most of the minutes. They scored most of the points.
Yeah.
Then you have what you called your sort of 22 plus, and that's your prime age cohort. So if you're building a contending team or you're in your contention window, that's where you want most of your ice time and most of your points coming from. That's where you have your stars, right? Usually 22 to about 27 is kind of that window. And the Flames have Wolf in that, and then Coronado, and then a whole bunch of guys who are NHLers, Ball, Farabee, Frost, even Zare, who, these are players. They're good. There's no stars. Maybe Coronado might be something down the road. Wolf is the lone star, obviously, and the reason I think the team is trying to accelerate this thing a little bit. And then you have your 21 and under, mostly prospects. They have Zane Perek, who's probably a blue chip guy, and then a whole bunch of the last two drafts have been very good. A lot of probably really good prospects there, but again, there's no McKenna, there's no McDavid, there's no Draisaitl, there's none of those era defining, especially center forward players that
Hmm.
usually you build around to create an epoch or an era, right? So, and that's kind of
Mhm.
Calgary's problem. There's no era defining talent. They might say it's Wolf, but you can't build around just a goaltender. That just doesn't work anymore, right?
Right. Yeah, I agree. That's one of the things that, going into last season that disappointed me in Craig, because I think he's done a pretty good job so far. Um, but a couple of those signings made no sense to me, like the Mantha and stuff like that. It's just we're just taking away opportunities to see what we have in that cupboard, so is that we know where we need to start focusing on in the next draft, for this one that just passed, and the next two, I'll say, just so we
Yeah.
can see what holes are there in the team, where what positions need to be tweaked and adjusted and whatnot. So I'm glad that he was pretty quiet this year on July 1. I'm actually really glad about that, because it kind of shows that potentially he learned his lesson there, and we may get to see some opportunity from some guys that we likely wouldn't have if we had started to make those signings. So I think it's good. I mean, no, in my opinion, I wasn't expecting to win last year. I'm certainly not expecting to win this year, but I do get excited seeing development, right? I just
Mm.
want to see progression from all those guys that are in that 21 to 25 age group. I just want to see how they flow, how they can gel as a team, and and kind of see how we're going to move forward. It's nice to have Wolf, and I think the way he played last year probably gave some unrealistic expectations to the fan base, as well as potentially the management. Just missing out on the playoffs by a couple of points, as the Flames have been apt to do over the last 20 years. As Dylan and I have referred to it numerous times as the mushy middle.
Yep.
It's frustrating from a fan standpoint. So I'm hoping that this year we can just see what we have in the cupboard, and see what we have coming up from the Wranglers, and let's get these kids the opportunity to show what they have.
Yeah. Well, I
Yeah,
would think. Go ahead, Dylan, then I'll jump in.
yeah. Like I agree with that. I'm just curious which of these guys are really important for the long-term success of the Flames. Like you're even looking at the top end of that, 24, 25, 26 age group. By the time the, Perek and those guys are in their prime, then the rest of these like Frost and Farabee and Ball and all those guys, they're going to be 32, Zeri, Coronado, probably
28. Yeah.
29, 30, right? So yeah, you need a couple veterans for sure. You need some veteran for any team
Yeah.
needs some veterans. Even if we were to blow it up right now, if you do it without keeping a few solid veterans, that's a problem, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Um, but I'm just curious, kind of I'm fascinated more than curious to see which of these guys is around for the proposed, competitive window, because I really like Connor Zary. Honestly, I'm a huge fan of him. I think when he's healthy, he's one of the most dynamic, if not the most dynamic forward on the team. Um, and that includes Huberdeau and Kadri, honestly. Even just thinking about something as simple as that night one overtime winner, stuff like
Mm.
that. Like Kadri does that stuff all the time too. But it's I'm just interested to see if he's going to be more than a second liner, and at what point are we going to have so many, you know 25 to 30-year-old second liners in 5 years that but still have like, kind of be stuck in the same position where we are now, where we have
Right.
six our whole top six is second liners and we don't have any first
Mm.
liners. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the issue for them is if they're trying to shift the competitive cohort to the prime age guys right now, The difficulty is how to do that because, Chris, you're talking about what they're doing this summer, and it's entirely possible that they did go out there and try to sign players, but
Yep.
UFAs right now are not flocking to Calgary in this position they're in, right? It's even with them pulling a semi Cinderella kind of season last year, making it to the playoffs. Calgary's not going to be a destination team until there's an Iginla to play with, until there's a Gaudreau to play
Yeah.
with, right? And that, and otherwise, if you want that competitive cohort to be 20, the prime age guys, you have to get a star, like right now. You can't wait.
Yeah.
As you said, Dylan, you can't wait 3, 5 years. That cohort ages out. Some of those guys will leave as unrestricted free agents. Some of them will age out. Like now you're actually building around Zane Perek at that point, but that's 5 years down the road. If you want to compete right now, you have to go get Robertson, and you probably have to try to trade for Rossi. Like you have to get way more aggressive than you are right now, and you're gonna have to start. You're gonna have to start investing from that veteran cohort and your prospect cohort, which is getting better. But you're gonna have to reinvest in that 25-year-old cohort right now, starting this summer, because that rapidly ages out, especially with the veteran cohort, because Backlund's 36. He's got 1 year left, and he played the hardest minutes on the team last year. Coleman's got 2 years
Yeah.
left. Anderson's probably going to leave because he's going to be an unrestricted free agent. That top of the roster is going to face attrition. But if you want the 25-year-old thing to be the competitive thing, you still need a bunch of those guys. That has to turn around immediately. So you can't play the game that I think they're playing right now, where they're trying to straddle, all of these worlds. Keep a bunch of the veteran guys because they're still good and they bring character. Try to build up the 25-year-old cohort somehow by getting the Frosts and the Farabees of the world, and then still trying to build up your prospect cohort. You can't suck and blow at the same time, right?
Yeah.
You gotta pick a lane here because you're not going to do all three of those things well. You can only do one of them well.
I, I
Yeah.
totally agree with that. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, no, I do understand what you're saying, and that's completely accurate. Um, I guess 2 years ago, my competitive window was starting to progress in the 26-27 season. I don't feel like we're at that moment the way we are currently. Because you're right, you've got our captain potentially may sign another 1 year contract, but I mean that doesn't really help out that much. I'm a huge Backlund fan though, so I'm not going to
As am
fault
I.
him on any of this. Um, Huberdeau obviously took some great strides last year. He looked like he was engaged again, which was fantastic. But we're not building a team around Huberdeau. Kadri
No,
looked good, in spurts. We're not doing that either with him. I think
no.
this summer or potentially this deadline coming up would be the prime window to execute a trade with Kadri because I feel like the return will never be as high as it is right now. Um,
Yep.
because I don't feel that when we are an actual competitive team that he's going to be relevant on this team either. I think he'll by that point will be a second or third line center being paid $7 million, and it's just going to hold us back at that point. So I think if obviously we got to get Anderson out the door. You could the writing's on the wall there. Just pull the trigger and do it. In
Yep.
my opinion, Kadri's got to be one of those guys that you can pull in some really good assets and give you the opportunity to trade up into potentially the top three of the draft, so we can get somewhat of a generational type talent. Because you're absolutely correct. You're not going to sign unrestricted free agents with no competitive window and no real system or future with the way the team is. I mean, as it is, Coronado is kind of our number one prospect at the moment. Um, and that didn't start coming on until the second half of last season. Before that, he was just a prospect.
Right.
Obviously he had a great season. It was a lot of fun to watch, but it took him not looking good, being dropped down to the A, and then coming back and really exploding after that, which was fantastic. It's good to see. But
And that wouldn't have
leading up
happened
to
if
that,
Mantha was healthy either,
Right.
exactly, very true.
right?
Yeah, very
We
true.
almost didn't see that. And like, I don't fault Mantha either. He was doing better than I thought he was going to do, to be frank. He was doing way better than I thought he was going to do. But we have no business going out there and signing guys like that. And we didn't last year, in my opinion. Just back to something you said there too, Chris. Like, I don't think Kadri's going to be an NHL player by the time the Flames are actually relevant, and that's, anyone who's watched this show knows I'm not the biggest Kadri fan, but that's not shitting on Kadri at all. That's just me saying dude's going to be 40, 41, 42 by the time the Flames are actually legitimately competitive. You know what I mean?
Jesus,
And
way
he's
to,
just not going to be
way to
playing
black
hockey.
pill the room. Way to black pill the room, Dylan. Holy, jeez.
um,
I
and if
think
you
on
look
the,
like,
go ahead.
if you look at what we have coming up, like, I agree with you. We got to trade some of these guys, and I do think you need to keep one or two solid vets around. Otherwise, you're and productive ones. Otherwise, you are kind of throwing all the kids to the wolves, and not having anyone to lean on doesn't help.
Well, you have to
But
ice a
Yeah,
team too, right? You
yeah,
got to
yeah,
sell tickets. You got to play a season. Yeah, and you certainly can't sell everybody off, right? But for me,
yeah,
it's just you got to decide what you're doing.
yeah,
If you want to compete right now, and it seems like all we hear is we want to make the playoffs next year. Screw that. Stop talking about making the playoffs. That's a
yeah,
loser. That's loser talk. Honestly, you're not gonna.
yeah,
If you make the playoffs as an 8 seed and you get off in the first round, which is franchise has done for, as you said, 20 years.
yeah,
It doesn't get you anywhere. It's actually the worst possible result. You should be gunning for rebuild, or you should be gunning for contender. You can't though
yeah.
anything if you're doing anything in between that, you're wasting everybody's time. You're wasting Kadri's
That's right.
time, Huberdeau's time, Backlund's time. You're wasting another prime season of Wolf. Um,
Mhm.
and if you're going to waste Wolf, then you might as well be bad and get McKenna or someone else. But
Yeah,
if you don't want to do that, you got to go get Robertson and Rossi and find you know find any star you can to make this a, a much better team as soon as possible. But
yeah.
don't go into the season with the roster they have right now. It just
there's
right.
No,
They're just
it's
going to
going to be
finish
the
ninth
same
again.
result. Yeah,
Yeah,
same result, right? Yeah, they've made no changes to the club so far this offseason. Like nothing
yeah,
worth mentioning.
yeah. And
So
then all
yeah,
you're betting on is Wolf being a Vesna winner, getting you into the first round, and being the plucky
right.
underdog again.
Yeah, yeah. And then as Daryl said, right, it's just a waste of 8 days, right? And
Right.
then we're just
Yeah.
and then the fan base is like, oh, back to this, back to the 2006 to 2017 era, right? Like just
Right.
in one year, out the next. It's just you can't draft well because you're not in a good position, can't make the playoffs, and if you do, you're out in the first round. It's just a complete waste of time.
yeah.
Well, the other thing that happens with teams like that is they don't sell the deadline either. Like for years, the
Mm.
Flames kept their good veterans who are expiring because they're trying to make the playoffs. Like Giordano
Yeah,
gone, TJ Brody gone. Like that, I could list all these former pillars on the team who left were not leveraged for returns and just
yeah,
perpetuated mediocrity.
You
yeah,
would not believe
yeah.
how much shit I got all those years ago when Giordano won that trophy, the Norris. And
Mm.
that summer, I was like, right now is the time. It's the best time. His value is high because he just won this trophy. I love Geo, but what are we doing here? you know,
Yeah, it's still a
and
I
business.
at that
didn't.
time, the team
Yeah.
was even a little bit more you know
Yeah,
effective
I
than they
still
were.
considered them in a contention window at the time, so I completely understood. Like they had Gaudreau, Kachuk was coming up, Bennett was still on the team, so I was like, I get it because this guy's still a really good player. But when they were not in the playoff race, when there was you know, expansion draft coming up. It was
Impending.
clear as day they were going to lose him in that, and they didn't trade him. And I was like, what the hell are you guys doing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he was 38 or something at that, 37, 38 at the time. It's like, this is, and there's just been lots of that over the years, because when you're always trying to scrape into the playoffs by the skin of your teeth, you're always forced to, keep everyone on the team until the last game of the season. And no, you didn't make it, but at least you gave it a good try.
Then you
Stop doing that.
No.
then you have
Yeah,
Berkey not moving Mike Camilleri because he didn't get quite the return, and instead losing him for nothing. Like,
Yeah, that's his story that he told, because he blew the trade. Like, when you're in negotiations, you got three people on the line, and they all don't. You miss them out, and you have to have an explanation for it, and everyone bought it, and it's just like, don't be ridiculous. You just missed out on his deals.
Yeah, some people, as in like Brad Treliving, are just horrendous at asset management. Horrendous at it.
And it's tougher when you have a Gaudreau and a Kachuk. Like, you're trying to win. I understood what he was doing. He did build eventually a good team that was disassembled quickly afterwards. But I think the path right now should be as clear as day. You have no stars, no forward stars. You don't even have any prospects of true forward stars. Maybe a lot of good to very good players, which is great to see. You have a top of the roster, which is aging rapidly, but it still has value, which is the other thing. Like, if Huberdeau was untradeable right now, and Kadri was untradeable, and Uyghur was untradeable, like all these guys turned into the San Jose Sharks, and nobody wanted any of this stuff. I completely understand just keeping them and being like, well, this is the team we have, but a lot of these guys got to have real value around the league.
do you think Huberdeau has value?
Like, probably more than he did 2 years ago, right? And
well, yeah, but that's 2 years ago it would be like you're paying 2 first rounds for a cap dump.
That's right.
Right.
So if you're not doing that anymore, I would consider it. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, we have a ton of cap space to be able to retain on both of our top contracts.
Yeah, that's true.
And now is the time to do it, right? Like, really.
Yeah, like a $5.5 million Huberdeau. Why wouldn't somebody who's contending want a $5.5 million Huberdeau, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like he has value. If
Coleman has value, Kadri has value.
I
bet you Uyghur would get you a ton, and I really like Uyghur, and he's probably the one guy they'd want to keep because he has sort of captain material to him.
Yeah,
But
I feel like he's definitely the next guy wearing the C. Yeah.
But there's so many guys in that, aging veteran cohort that you could probably still flip, but they're sitting on them. Mm-hmm. They're trying to make the 25-year-old cohort the thing, I think, because of Wolf, but, unsuccessfully so far. And then they just don't have, they have got good to very good prospects aside from Parekh, but you're probably going to need 5 to 6 guys who are elite, and they have to be between 22 and 27 to contend. And if you're not on that path, how do you get on that path? That's the question.
And like a few years ago, or a couple of years ago, Conroy was talking about the Dallas model, right? The Dallas model had at that time an up and coming Johnston in that cohort. In the same cohort, you'd have Heiskanen, Harley, who was up and coming. You'd have Hintz and Robertson, who are also both in the 25-ish year old. You had all of those guys who were that age, and are all second to first liners or second to first pair guys. And Ottinger. Yeah,
that's right.
Right, like, if you want to do that, then you got to go all in for it. But if you're not doing that, then you got to do the not scorched earth, but the close to scorched earth rebuild, where you're maybe keeping like Backlund and Uyghur, and then everyone else is 25 and under.
That's right.
Yeah, and that all came down to drafting for Dallas, right? I mean, that was some luck, right?
Oh, it's a lot of luck.
They had Rupe Hintz come out of nowhere, right? And kind of he was I think second or third or mid round pick. And then you had the one draft with, 3 stars in
Yeah,
rapid succession. And like that's not a model, that's just something that happened. Because if
That's
teams
lucky.
could just
exactly.
pick 3 stars in one draft and have them all develop together, they definitely would, as with the Flames, right?
Yeah,
But let's say
yeah.
they've
So
actually
what?
done that this year. That's 5 years out, at
Yeah.
least,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So what you're
They
saying is
need.
we need to hire their scout, their head scout, is what you're saying.
I
Mm.
think they need to pray to whatever god Dallas prayed
Right.
to for a summer and get lucky
Yeah,
because I
yeah.
don't think Dallas has done that since. It's just
No,
you know if you look at the Flames 1984 draft, I think that was their best one ever. It's ridiculous. There's 7
it was pretty
NHLers there.
decent.
One was Gary Roberts. Yeah, so
Yeah,
and that
not
helped
bad.
build the Stanley Cup team eventually. But yeah,
5 years
and
later.
5 years later, exactly. So if the Flames wanted to do it now or have that coalesce now at the current thing that they have around Wolf, that had to happen 5 years ago.
Yeah,
Hmm.
Right?
And I don't specifically think that every guy needs to be that. Like, if you have a
No,
goalie that's a little bit older, that's fine.
right.
Like Wolf can be a 32-year-old goalie for a contending team. You can have, a couple of 32, 33, 34-year-old players on the team,
For sure.
but most of them should be in that, 20 to 27, 8 type of range, right? And like, even if you look at some of the guys we have upcoming, like you got Cole Reshney, who's just drafted this year, and Potter. Both of those guys look like they could be something eventually, but that's 5 years down the road, 6 years down the road, and
Yeah,
like
they're 18. Yeah.
zero prospect experts are out there saying these guys are future top liners, right? And not that you
yeah,
believe everything those guys say, because whatever can happen, right? But really, Parekh is the only like guy, you look at Gradine, Basha, Muse, Morin, all of these kids, like we have a bunch of really good middle of the lineup prospects, guys
Right.
who could eventually likely to be middle of the lineup type of guys. And then we have Parekh, and that's it.
Yeah.
Right.
yeah.
Yep.
Our
And Wolf.
defensive prospect pool is way better than our forward lines, right? I mean,
Yeah.
we're pristine in the middle six. Like we're looking real good in the middle six. We've got a ton of them at
Just
this
like we
moment.
have for
Yeah.
20 years.
And it
Yeah,
just comes down to the fact that if you look at true contending teams, they have a Kucherov, they have a Barkov, they have a McKinnon, they have McDavid, they have that. Even Kopitar back in the day was a superstar. He didn't score the 130
yeah,
points, but he was one of the most dominant players on the ice, right? You need one of the
yeah.
most dominant players on the ice, and it has to
And they
be
had
a
Gabbard
forward. And
quick, you know.
they had, yeah,
Yeah.
well, they also had, yeah, Drew Doughty, right? So they had, most of
Yeah.
them had more than one. They had
You know,
Stamkos and Hedman and Point in
we
Tampa Bay, right? I'm saying,
Yeah.
you need a core of but not
yeah, yeah.
just very good players. They need to be, a handful of elite players, and one or
High
more of them
level.
have to be
Yeah,
one of the best players at their position in the league.
yeah,
And the Flames
Yeah.
might have that
yeah,
in Wolf, they might have that in Parekh, and that's it
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah,
right now.
we need a Kachuk.
Right?
We need a Kachuk.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's gone. Even a Gaudreau
Yeah,
or an Iginla, like those were era-defining
right.
talents, right?
Yeah.
And
That's right.
that player does not exist, at least at forward for the Flames. And like I said, if you want to be a true contender, think of the Penguins. They had Crosby, but they also had Malkin. They also had Letang.
Yeah,
They had.
yeah, yeah.
It's you
Fleury.
usually need. And there's more guys that I could name that went through there, right? And it's just like if even Edmonton now has Draisaitl and McDavid, not just McDavid. Look at
Yeah,
Colorado;
you need
it's
that
not just
secondary.
McKinnon, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah,
and even Dallas went out and added Rantanen, right? It's just, and you're trying to compete with those teams right now if you want to make the playoffs and do something.
yeah,
Yeah, no, you're not
yeah,
going to.
yeah. Or even if you want to get out of the first round, which good luck, right?
Like,
You know,
yeah,
those
unless
teams
Wolf
are
turns
built
into
for the
Dominic
playoffs.
Hasek. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And then you also have Bedard coming up. You have Celebrini coming up. And when McKenna's drafted next year, you have McKenna coming up. These are true blue. I mean, McKenna could be a
Yeah.
generational talent. So if you're not getting those guys, and I've talked to Brian Bader about this because he does the hockey prospecting stuff, he does the modeling, and he knows all the data. And I asked him, how many true talent elite players are drafted in every draft? He said 5 on average.
Wow.
You might get to 10 if you stretch the definition of a star a little further. And it's
Right.
just
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
yeah. So, and the vast majority of those guys are picked in the top 15, usually
Yeah.
the top 10, and mostly the top 5, right? So,
You get really,
Yeah.
really lucky with the odd Gaudreau or Kucherov or Point or whatever.
Kucherov,
But like,
that's right.
but
They're 1 in 10 years, roughly.
yeah, exactly, right. But like,
Yeah.
you don't need to win the lottery, but you need to give yourself a good enough chance a
Yeah.
couple years in a row. And I feel like the cohort we should be building around Perek. Like, sure, Wolf could be there or whatever, but like Perek should be the oldest guy that we're building around.
Yeah. And if you look at like the Blackhawk model, usually the defenders that you build around tend to be the older part of the cohort. So you had Seabrook and Duncan Keith in Chicago, and I think Keith was 26, I think, or something by the time you got Taves and Kane coming in, who
Yeah.
eventually broke them out of their
Yeah.
terrible 10-year rebuild or something and became a dynastic team. But yeah, they so you're right. Perek should probably be the oldest player of the next contention cohort, which puts you a decade out, honestly, which is what scares the shit out of GMs and franchises when you start talking like that, because they don't want to think about having a good team or a great team 10 years from now. They want a good team now. But
Yeah.
good
And
team
like,
now turns you into 20 years of good team forever.
is Conroy going to be there for that? And is Murray even going to be alive for that? So why would they care, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And as a fan, I would love to once again have my pick of seats at the Saddle Dome like I did in the '90s. Right, that was great.
Yeah. I don't know if they would abandon as badly as they did in the 90s. I lived through the Young Guns. Maybe you guys did too, but
Yeah.
there was a lot more problems with the league and the Flames at that time than there is now. Like, all you'd
Yeah.
have to do is draft a McKenna next year. People would be
Right.
excited until the Flames are great again. Because
Right.
I think when Bedard got drafted, they sold the most jerseys in the NHL. Connor Bedard in Chicago.
Right.
So,
It was like a week later. Like
yeah.
after yeah.
Can you imagine if McKenna was drafted here? The city would lose its
Oh, yeah.
mind, even if the Flames lost every game next year and the year
Yeah.
after.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nobody
Yeah.
would give a shit.
Yeah.
That's right. It would
Absolutely.
be
I mean,
fun.
even when Gaudreau arrived, everyone, and he was no McKenna, people were still doubting it because of his size. But the feeling in the city and the franchise when he came out the next year and was, started leading the team in scoring, it's like, okay, this is something. And it took until, I don't know, 2019. I mean, they did
Yeah.
the one round in 2014, but they weren't really good again until 2019.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that 2015 series against Vancouver was fun. And
Yeah,
then obviously, and then we
wouldn't
got our
say that.
asses handed to us, right? But
Yeah,
yeah, that first round was phenomenal, and the feel good stuff with between Gaudreau and Stajan and all that stuff. It was a lot of fun, that series, right? But yeah, you're right. It was still another 4 years. We had to wait until Kachuk came in and really started looking like he was going to be one of the top people at his position, as you said earlier, right? That we really started looking like we were potentially a contender, and then unfortunately the Flames went one direction with a coaching decision, which I mean I'm still a big Sutter fan personally, but I understand why younger players wouldn't necessarily appreciate playing under him. I get it. I do get it.
yeah,
I
full
I
on
have
mutiny.
Yeah, like I have a few, young staff members that work for me as well. So I mean, there's one way you can deal with them, and there's other ways you should not. Right? If you
I
want
don't
to
even
keep them
think it
around.
was just the young players because I watched Nazem Kadri at the end of that season
Oh yeah,
when it was
yeah,
over,
he
and he
wasn't
was
happy.
done. He was
Yeah,
done, right? So it looked like
mm,
a lot of the team, even the older guys, were like, "This is."
yeah.
On Kadri's
And,
behalf, I mean, he thought he
and
was signing in here to be another contending team, and it's all falling apart.
Yeah, so did
yeah,
Huberdeau, and so did Coleman. Like you were saying, free agents aren't coming to Calgary to to sign here for the future. Coleman came here because Kachuk, Gaudreau, blah 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 blah, Monahan, blah 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 blah,
Yeah,
Giordano. We had a competitive team that looked like it was going to be winning. Even Markstrom, I think, signed right before Coleman did. I could be wrong on that, but
around the same time. Yeah,
yeah,
mm,
but we had what looked like a great team, and then even I remember coming out like I've never been a Kadri fan, but I remember coming out of that summer being like, we got Kadri, we got Huberdeau. Is it Kachuk? No. Is it Gaudreau? No. But it's a different thing, and it could work. And this could extend our window by a couple of years, and it did
yeah.
not. And whether that's Sutter's fault or not, I think it's partially Sutter. I think it's partially Tree Living. I think it all stems. It's a bigger picture thing than just the coaching of that year. I think it stems back to improper asset management by Tree Living in years prior, whether it be not giving Kachuk the long term extension he wanted originally, not lowballing Gaudreau the summer before Gaudreau left, forcing his agent to say, screw you, I don't want to talk to you anymore, basically. um, and just,
It's tough to build a contending team around mercenaries that you sign or trade for that are like 29, 30 years old.
yeah.
It's a deep gamble, right? That's really tough to do, especially when you don't, because they kind of were eating their feedstock for years heading into that because they're trying to contend, right? So there was no up and coming supporting cohort behind those guys. There wasn't even a Coronado or something, right? You had
yeah,
Mangiapane kind of aging out, and then you had Backlund and all these existing sort of pieces that were supposed to be the supporting crew for the
Kachuk was the
previous
bottom 8.
contention. Right.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. All those guys felt pretty comfortable in their position, right? There was nobody nipping at their heels to take their job
Yeah. Well, and
unless
the
unless
other
they were
issue is
signed.
like in the NHL, when in all the studies looking at this, the prime age is 22 to 27, 28, roughly, right? And
Yeah,
everyone, in aggregate after about 29, your impact does this steadily. So
yeah,
contending teams, they need a core usually in that, you know, prime age, at least most of their core players, right?
Hmm.
And as we found out, Huberdeau is not as good as his 115 point season suggested.
right.
So it was an interesting gamble, and no doubt it was prodded by ownership who's always trying to be relevant, always trying to compete. But it would have been the absolute perfect time to kick off a real rebuild.
Yeah,
I don't blame them for that. Like, did Huberdeau work out? No. Did Kadri work out the first season? Definitely not. Then the other seasons a little bit more. But I don't blame them for doing that because the theory behind it made sense. And I don't blame even the Huberdeau contract because Gaudreau wasn't as good as his 115 point season either, right? He was
Mhm.
always a 75 to 95 kind of point guy, which is kind of what Huberdeau was as well. So why wouldn't giving the exact same contract to this other guy who profiles very similarly, right?
Yeah.
Why not? Right? Like it made sense to me. And it didn't work out as it should have. And I always try and make sure, I'll sit here and I'll crap on Tree Living all day, but there's some things that he did, in my opinion, that did make sense, and you gotta give people props as well. even if it didn't work out in the long run.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think a big problem with that, obviously that everybody's talks about that summer where things changed with the Flames. And I think one of the biggest issues was just culture in the building or in the locker room. I think the culture was shit, from top down. We had just lost, three of our top players in Monahan, Kachuk, and Gaudreau.
Yeah.
Obviously, yeah, they brought in the Huberdeau, but I mean, you can't lose, two or three of your top line players and expect the culture to remain positive, right? It's just not going to happen,
Yeah.
no matter who you bring in.
The truth about that team is the contention window was probably closing anyways. Like as you said, Dylan, betting on Huberdeau was kind of like betting on Gaudreau because Gaudreau was turning 29 or something at the same
Yeah,
time
and
too.
Huberdeau was
So he would have.
turning 30, I think.
Yeah, they're both roughly the same age and both
Yeah.
kind of, you know, turning the corner into post apex players that you have to pay a lot just to keep around. So the real guy they would have had to build around at that point was Kachuk,
Mhm.
but
Yeah.
they didn't have a lot of supporting infrastructure. It was all kind of ahead of Kachuk in the cohort in terms everyone was older. There wasn't a
Mhm.
lot behind him because they'd invested so much in trying to make that team into a contender. So afterwards, the bottom was kind of going to fall out unless you could keep Kachuk and support him. So when he left, that was pretty much it.
That was it.
You know
Yeah.
who said that actually at the time was Kachuk.
Right.
He even said, I don't see, in different terms, he said, I don't see the Flames winning in the future. And I looked at a couple of teams and I saw Florida with what's coming
Yeah.
and what's already here, and that we have a window to compete for some time. And
Right.
turns out he was completely wrong and shouldn't have listened to himself on that one.
What an asshole.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
that's fair.
let's get into, and we talked about it a little bit just kind of on the peripheral here, but how should the Flames build their lineup this year? Like if you had your choice, and obviously you can't just, you don't know what a return for players would be, but like if you had your
Yeah.
choice, who would go, who would stay, and how would which players would be getting the minutes to get the experience? Because I don't think
Yeah.
the actual lines matter that much. I think minutes matter more than lines.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
like I mentioned, I would if I was Conroy's and I'd figuring out like can I turn this into a contender in the next year, 12, 24 months? Can I trade for Robertson? Can I trade for Rossi? Probably both if not just Robertson alone. If I can't do that, then I would take the other tact completely and say, all right, Anderson, you're gone. Kadri, I'm going to auction you off. I'm going to see what our other veterans are worth, just to see what I can do. I would probably put people like Farabee and Frost on the auction block just to see what they can get. I put Sharon Govich up there. Like there's a lot of middle six guys in the 25-year-old cohort that don't move the needle, won't be here once Perek is a superstar, right? So I wouldn't trade them all off, but I'd start looking at what can I liquidate to turn this into a rebuild and start really reinforcing Perek as the cohort that I'm going after. So one, the team either has to be very good next year. I have to add at least two more stars in the prime age. If I can't do that, I'm selling off. I'm going to be bad. I'm re-signing Wolf, and we're gonna try to get a few more stars at the 18-year-old level, not the 26-year-old level.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. I think given and I honestly don't see much of a reality where we're able to sign those two guys, to be honest. I think it would
No,
be a tough ask. I mean, it really would. Um, so I honestly think that that's where we need to be headed at this moment. Like I said earlier, I think Kadri's value has never been bigger. He had a couple of really nice seasons. The entire NHL world, at least as far as media, talks about him nonstop about how much of a leader he is and stuff like that. So let's ride that and get
Capitalize.
the best return we could possibly get, right?
Yeah.
Because we all know that year 5, 6, 7 of that contract is going to likely start looking pretty piss poor, and then we're not going to be able to trade him at that point, right? Without retaining his salary.
Well,
So
the
I
other
think,
question is, what happens if Kadri has a great season next year for the Flames? For the Flames,
right,
nothing. They might make the
right,
playoffs. They probably don't. That's
exactly,
what's the point
exactly.
of that? And if he doesn't have a good season for the Flames next year, if he takes a step back,
Mm,
now he's not worth as much. The contract
Can't
looks
trade him.
worse.
Yeah.
Yeah, you
exactly.
might be able to trade him, but it'll be at the deadline. It'll be for a second rounder or some shit, right? So
Yeah, like
yeah,
at this
it's
point, unfortunately for Nazem, he has no value for the Flames at the moment, right? Like he's
no.
not
They
going to
might
get us
argue
to the next
for
level.
leadership, but
You know,
no, yeah.
sure, yeah,
Unless they get a Robertson and a Rossi and they turn it around on a dime. But the
yeah,
problem with the 25-year-old cohort is everyone wants those players all the time. Like you can count on one hand how often they've been acquired
mhm,
over the last decade. Eichel, Stone, both to
mhm,
Vegas, of course, those scumbags. I
yeah,
can't actually
yeah, yeah,
think. I can't think of
Kachuk.
another
yeah,
superstar. Kachuk, we
Yeah.
traded one of them.
Yeah.
That's about
yeah,
it.
yeah.
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 And Robertson
Yeah,
would
there's
be that. Robertson hasn't had. I think he had kind of a down year, but he stepped up in the playoffs again. He's a guy who has scored 100 points. He's a guy who can put up 35, 40 goals.
yeah,
But
He's not a
one
center.
35, 40 goal, 100 point guy
yeah,
gets the Flames to what, 8 playoff games, maybe?
That's why I said
Maybe.
you probably need two stars, right?
Yeah.
And it's just
And is Rossi a
it's
star?
extremely yeah. I don't know. Yeah,
Yeah.
he's the only other guy available who
Yeah.
profiles as maybe a star, right?
Yeah.
It's very very difficult to turn rebuilds around on a dime like this. They can call it retool all you
yeah,
want, but if you just hang around the ninth spot in the West the whole time, uh,
yeah.
why?
It's just
Yeah.
wasting everybody's time at that, right?
Yeah,
Wasting development in the players, you're wasting the veterans, you're wasting the fan base. You're just wasting, wasting, wasting. There's no
yeah.
sense in it.
So,
So there it
yeah,
is. There it is, Craig Conroy. We've just solved all your problems. We're building around Perec
Yeah, it's
now.
just that easy. Yeah,
yeah,
Just do
yeah.
it.
Yeah, I mean, and I know that, like I've said at the beginning of the show here that, by the time the cohort that I want to see, which is Perek, maybe a couple other guys who are drafted and guys who are drafted in the next draft and the draft after that. By the time those guys are in their prime, the only guy who's going to be on the team most likely this year who will be a part of that is Perek and Wolf, if that, you know
maybe
what I mean?
Coronado or Zary. Yeah, but they'll be
Maybe
like
Coronado
30.
or Zeri. But and that leads me to my next point here, where I don't I want to see Zeri get minutes, right? He's one of the guys I want to see get more minutes,
Mhm.
along with Perek. I hope Perek works his way up throughout the year and kind of proves that he can take power play one. Because as much as I love Uyghur's not a great power play one guy. Um, he's great at pretty much everything else, though. But with Zeri, we got to find a role for him. Yes, I want to see him get minutes, but he started on the second line wing, and then he moved over to center, and then he got moved down to the third, and he was producing the whole time, and then he got hurt, and then he came back, and they put him on the fourth line because
Right.
they had Frost then, so there was no room for Zeri up.
Barely.
And it's just okay. Is he a winger? Fine. Give him fucking minutes. Is he a
Right.
center? Fine. Find some center minutes for him. Stop jerking with him, right?
Yeah.
That's
I mean,
if you spend any time with Dylan there, Kent, you'll quickly realize that heaven and earth will be moved for Connor Zary.
He's an exciting player, and you're right. We don't quite know what he is yet, which is a little frustrating. And the other thing I would have been doing as a team, during the rebuild is flipping guys a little bit more. So Sharon Govich is never a player I would have kept. Acquiring him for Tyler Toffoli made some sense, and then he had that great season. I was like, flip that guy. 30 odd goals. He's
Asset management.
26 years old.
Yeah.
He's 31. There's no way he's going to repeat that. Do that a little bit more aggressively, but and that's why after Kadri having a career season in goals, flip that guy. Like as soon as the value peaks on these guys who aren't going to be here when Parek's 23, 24, flip those guys right now. Don't wait.
Yeah.
But they re-signed Sharon Govich because they get excited. Oh, right, this worked out, and now 17 goals, and I think that's probably closer to what he is. 17, 20 odd goals a year, not particularly impactful otherwise. Probably a good player if you could plunk him down on a third line on a true contender, right? But for the Flames, yeah, he's just a guy. So take just guys who have good seasons and flip them.
Well, that's right. We already know that he's, not particularly good in our zone. He's
No.
not particularly good at creating chances. He's not particularly good at excelling his line mates and making everybody look good. He just at that
No.
year he had a really good shot and couldn't miss a net. It was fun to watch. It was exciting. Good for him for getting the record for the Belarusian, goals and all that. But yeah, you're right. It's just asset management. Again, the value could never be that high, and now he has a contract that's potentially more than he should be making now. So is what
it's
it is,
just
I guess. But it's just another squandered player. So he's just eating up another spot for nothing.
Yep.
And when we got him, I was excited because I remember his first year in New Jersey. I was super excited about it, and I remember watching. I would watch a few New Jersey games here and there, and he was just a fun player to watch, and I think he lives somewhere between that 30 goal season and the 17 goal season. I don't think that he's as bad as he was this year. There was some injuries, there were some sicknesses, and there's also a lot of line juggling relatively unnecessarily at points. Again, I'm a Huska fan, but some of the you can never be completely happy with any coach, I don't think. But but with Sharon Govich, I think, and if you look at what is it, 5.25, I think his deal. I think that's a
Yeah,
good deal for
5.75.
5.75. Yeah, that's a fine deal over the next few years for a guy who puts up 20 to 25, which I think is kind of where he's going to live. I don't think, like, with how the cap is going and the numbers that guys are signing for these days, I feel like that's gonna not be a hampering deal at all. It's the roster spot thing is annoying because we have younger guys, and if you look at it, he's 27, right? So I agree with you on that, because he's not likely to be here once the real competitive cohort that we will eventually have gets here. And I was never really thinking of it that way. That's why our conversation on the Discord the other day really piqued my interest, because I looked at some of these guys, like even Frost and Farabee and some of these other guys who I'm like, am I the hugest fan of them? No. Could I see what Conroy is doing? Sure. But then I really think about it and I'm like, what's the point?
Yeah, unless you're going to trade them and then flip them, right? That's the
Yeah.
only. Yeah, you take Kuzmenko and you take Peltier, who I liked at the time, but hasn't worked out as a true asset. You turn them into assets that you're then going to flip, but that's just given where they are in the build, right? If this was a team with a top line, with a superstar in that top line, and you're filling out your third line and stuff, fill your boots, right? That's a Sharon Govich on a third line is probably pretty good. A Frost or a Farabee on a third line,
Yeah, that's when you
definitely.
sign Coleman. right?
Yeah, that's when you sign Coleman. That you
Yeah,
keep Kadri. Like now you're in a contention window. When you're rebuilding, you're not in a contention window. You don't have prime age superstars. You can't incrementally improve this team into a contender. It's not possible.
Right.
You can't change Kuzmenko into Farabee and Pelche into Frost and be like, okay, we've gone from a ninth place team to fighting for the Western Conference. Like, no, you've gone from
If
a
only.
10th place team to a ninth place team, maybe, right?
Yeah.
So it's
Maybe.
just,
Yeah.
and it's those moves are out there and you can definitely make them. But like I said, there's no incrementally changing the Flames from, middle tier team to a top tier team. It's not going to work, won't happen. So you either have to flip your assets until you get that top tier asset, or you have to be bad enough and draft often enough to get them.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Exactly. Are Frost and Farabee better than Kuzmenko and Pelche? I guess
Yeah,
maybe a little.
yeah.
Not a ton.
but maybe a
Yeah.
little isn't doing anything.
Doesn't
Exactly.
do anything. Not for
Yeah,
this
Yeah.
team. Not really.
yeah,
Unless, someone comes along, Frost has a great year, and someone comes along, maybe a first for Frost.
Yeah.
Sure.
Sure.
Want Sharangovich too? Yeah, take him.
but does
Right.
does
Yeah. Throw in a
does
second. We'll
Conroy
give you
pull that
Stenko.
trigger?
Yeah.
No, I don't think
Yeah,
so. Because
yeah,
it's, as I said, the team seems stuck trying to perpetually straddle the two worlds, right?
yeah.
Yeah. Uh,
So let's say let's say that the team does what we all seem to think, the three of us anyway seem to think is probably the best, building around Perek as the superstar and then going forward with like the guys who are 19, 18, 17, 16 right now, right?
Yeah.
Moving forward with that. I know he's 23 or 24 now, but does Wolf fit in with that with you? Just
I think so. But the issue is if you, let's say Wolf is who we think he is, which is a starter, right? You
yeah,
sign him this year to 6, 7, 8 years. You see how it goes. Um, and if that's a player you can. Let's say he ages out of the contention window. That's a player you can flip at 30 or whenever he's going to
yeah,
expire. I mean, they just traded 35-year-old Markstrom for a first rounder, right? So
yeah,
he's such a valuable asset that you keep him around long term. You see if the rebuild catches him, and then you have a starting goaltender, which is great. But if not, you sign him to a good deal and you flip him if you have to, like down the road. So
yeah.
um, I know people think if you have Wolf, you can't rebuild because he's too good he's going to stop you from being bad. And I've heard some people just say trade him now, which I wouldn't do,
yeah,
obviously. But if you sign him to a good deal and he becomes a superstar, but you think you're going to miss the contention window, you trade him.
yeah.
Yeah. I agree because in 8 years he's going to be 32. There's plenty of goaltenders in the league that are top notch at that age, right? So I
Yeah,
mean, if you're looking at a 6 year to 8 year window, I think he's going to be super valuable at that time. And if things don't work out and we miss that mark for timing, like Kent said, he'd be easy to flip, right?
So what does that deal look
Especially if he
like?
turns into the goaltender that we think he's going to turn into.
Yeah.
hmm
So what does that deal look like? Say say it comes out tomorrow that Wolf's been extended. Probably won't happen until mid-season or something like that. But what happens? What's that number? What's that term for
yeah.
you? And then like what's fair for the team and fair for the player?
I'm sure the team will try to go for 8 years. And part of the reason it may not have happened yet is I'm sure the agent and the player would like a little bit more leverage, even given after his Calder season, right? They might not want to rush to sign a long-term contract because they could be leaving millions of dollars. Like, how much more valuable if he has an as good or better season again next year? And they might
Yeah.
want to bet on themselves. If I'm the Flames, I'm trying to go 8. 8 times
Yeah.
6, 8 times 7, right? Something in there, which is sort of the Dostel kind of comparison that you brought in before we started recording here. So I'm sure that might be what Conroy's trying to pitch. And the agent and the player might be thinking, yeah, but if I am one of the best goaltenders again in the league next year, coming off a Calder thing, coming off the best player in the AHL, that's when I can start asking for 8 times 8
Yeah.
or more, right? So
Yeah. I was going to
that might
say
be
eight,
what's
8 or
happening
eight
right
and a
now.
half.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the Swayman Allmark number is
That's
8
right.
times 8, 8 times 8.5, right?
Yeah.
I have no, honestly, like, would it be preferable to get the guy at 6.5, 7? Sure. But if the Flames
Yeah.
have so much cap space, caps going up, they don't have a bunch of players in line to make a whole shitload of money. The one of the only things we've been missing besides a first line center is a goalie for years. Markstrom was good for 2 years out of his 4 or 5 years here. Other than that,
Yeah.
we've had a bunch of Jonas Hiller and Brian Elliott doing fucking nothing, right?
Come on.
Not throwing shade at those two specifically. You want me to go with Kerry Ramo, whoever, right? Like,
Yeah.
we've
Just
had a whole
painful.
bunch of nothing for years.
Yeah.
And I think having that anchor and having a goalie like that locked up for 8 times 8, that's another thing that players look at and say, well, we have this relatively young guy who's going to be locked up till he's 32 or whatever, and he's almost won a Calder, and he's got a Vesna vote in his first year. He's probably going to get plenty more over the next few years.
Yeah.
Hey, this is a team that I can see a future with because there's a stud number one defenseman in the system that doesn't look too far away, and there's a stud goalie here now, right?
Right.
And they're both young.
Yeah.
So
I think
I
the
don't
only way
mind
you're going to
throwing 8
get him.
times 8 at them.
Yeah. I think the only way you're going to get him at, 5 to 6 is if you're doing a 3 or 4 year deal, right?
Yeah.
It would have
Yeah.
to be a bridge because I'm sure his camp is going to be looking, north of 7 for sure. And so to do an 8 year, you're definitely probably looking closer to 8, I would say.
Yep.
Yeah.
Which I'm comfortable paying him that, to be honest with you. I mean, I
I
don't.
do it too.
I mean, his first season, I was very unsure, and I said it on this show. I didn't see a ton that I was super excited about in his first few games, and
Yeah.
I mean, and I'm more than willing to say I was wrong. So I'm more than happy to say that. He looked very good. Come mid season last year, it was nice. It was fun to watch.
Yeah.
Yeah. To be that good behind a team that they say they had all this defensive structure, but it looked like a bunch of monkeys running around in circles half the
Yeah,
time.
yeah, it wasn't great. It wasn't
To
great.
look that good behind that team and to look that good behind a team that couldn't score. And one thing that
Yeah.
impresses me about that kid too is how calm he is, how cool and collected he is, and how many times did he let in a bad goal? Not that many, right? And how many times did he let in have a bad game? Like 4.
Handful. Yeah.
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 Like, and then if something shitty happened, he bounced back like 5 minutes later, you know?
Well, like Kiprusoff at his peak was very much that player too, right? Just bad
Yeah.
goal when it happened, rarely,
Yeah.
take a drink of
Yeah.
water, get back in net. Bad
But
game if it happened. Next game, shut up. Right?
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And with
Yeah.
Kiprusoff, maybe not the water. I think he just ran back to the dressing room and had a smoke. Uh,
Yep.
We don't know that there was water in that bottle either.
no.
Well, whatever it was, it helped.
Yeah.
Yeah, whatever it was, it helped exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Well,
Kent, really appreciate having you on. Have to do this
Yeah.
again sometime. It was an absolute blast.
Went on for a bit, so I hope people can stick through the whole hour podcast.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we do a lot of 1 hour, 1 hour 20.
Okay.
We assume the viewers watch at least 30 minutes for sure. So
Yeah.
we try
There
to
we
do all our best stuff at the beginning if we can.
But also we do
We do
some
a,
good stuff at the end.
yeah, we do
Yeah.
we do a skill testing question at the end, and we make sure that they answer the questions in the comments.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
a good idea.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, man.
No worries.
Did you want to plug anything or?
I mean, if people want to join the Discord, it's called Big Body Presence. I also write on Substack sometimes under that name too. It's when I kind of feel like it. So some of my more esoteric thoughts go there, and then I'm on X. I'm on Twitter, Kent_Wilson.
All right, make sure you go
Easy peasy.
follow Kent. Follow us at armchairgm_pod. Make sure you hit us up on Facebook or Reddit or wherever you might find us. And yeah, let us know what you feel about which kind of cohort the Flames should be building around, and if the way Conroy has been building this team is the way you think they should, in the comment section down below. And cheers, go Flames, go.
Go Flames. Thanks for joining, everyone.